The digital world moves fast, but real growth comes from real conversations. This is e-Coffee with Experts, where marketers and founders share what's actually working in SEO, AI, and digital growth. Grab your coffee and fuel your mind as we chat with top minds about their wins, struggles, and lessons you won't find in a blog post. Brought to you by Digital Web Solutions, we bring real talk to help you grow your business, one episode at a time. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, Victor here with Coffee with Experts. And today I've been so far away from the podcasting environment. I feel like a little bit rusted, but I have someone to help me here who's been producing TV shows and everything else related since 40 years ago, working with IT, 3D modeling, a lot of things this is going to talk about. But today, Managing Director at Rapyd Cloud is here with us, Wes Tatters. Wes, how are you doing?
Victor, pleasure to be here.
Amazing. Great to know you. Great to be here with you. Great to know about more of your story, about more of the
Likewise.
things that have been happening. But alas, people are not here. They didn't click on the video to hear me blabbing and talking about who you are. They want to actually know from you. So if we can start, I already know about yourself. I already know some of the trivia pieces about yourself, but you're a very interesting guy. You're not only somebody who managed to make money out of enterprises. No, you did something different. You were talking in a different market with different people, and now you're in the SaaS, you're in the tech market itself with so many knowledge to bring to us, so with so many stories, and we need to get started. So my first question would be, Wes, how did it all started? Where were you 40 years ago? Where are you now? If you can share us more about the brilliant man behind the camera, that would be lovely.
It's a crazy journey. I started in IT before people knew really what computers was. I was chatting to someone recently and we were having a laugh that my first assignment when I was studying was on punch cards, little bits of paper where we punched holes in it, created a stack of these things and sent them to a data center and waited a week to get a result to see if we passed the class or not. So I've seen the growth and evolution of IT across almost a 40-year period. Part of the uniqueness of that journey was that I also have a deep love for film, television, and production, and was a part of the journey of the joining, I guess, of IT and film and television. I was there at that cross point very, very early on where the first early edit suites, what we know of today, everyone thinks of having Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere on their laptop. How hard is it? I was back at the very edge of that where people were going, you mean we could not use tape to do an edit? My traditional, I learnt to film edit on a Steinbeck, and I learnt to video edit on a reel-to-reel tape, on a reel-to-reel, 1-inch Sony, big, large reel, sort of 1-inch tape machine. So I've been right across the edge of all of that technology, and it's given me a lot of interesting insights. But my love of both has allowed me to do, I guess, things that a lot of people haven't necessarily been able to venture into. And I've seen things and seen a part of that journey that I guess is a little bit unique. I also have had the opportunity to spend a lot of time working with some amazing and talented creative people, amazing and talented technical people, been involved in the publishing process, the authoring process. So it's been a really kind of crazy journey and an exciting one as well.
Nice to know. I can see how exciting it was by your voice, by how you are talking about it all. Whenever I think of media being produced years and years ago, especially 3D, let's just say, the first thing that comes to my mind, which is not the first at the time, but the first that I relate to is Star Wars and the first saga of Star Wars. So we're talking about the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth movie. And I imagine that you worked with similar tools that George Lucas used at the time. Is that it, or am I far-fetching too much?
If we look at sort of the first true 3 movies, they were created with traditional film skills. They were created with backplates and compositing tools, and they were edited largely on film. It wasn't really until much later, probably in the early, the mid-80s to the early 2000s, that we really started to see digital as an alternative. And we were kind of at the forefront of that. We had the opportunity to produce in Australia the first children's television series produced entirely in 3D, using 3D animation techniques. I think it was about the third in the world, and ours was the first long-form product. We produced 26 half-hour children's animated shows. It was really like the equivalent of making 20 story movies in the amount of crazy effort. And if you look at them, they were sort of lightweight. They were kid shows. They had lots of music. They had lots of animated characters. They had lots of puppets and lots of dancing. But it was all 3D animation. So that was like 2000. And we were pretty much the first to attempt it. It's definitely first to attempt it in the Southern Hemisphere. And we learnt a huge lot about technology and about the technology and about what could be done in the purely digital space. Sort of at the time in Australia, we were right on the transition from the old 4:3, which was the old square TV set that we all used to know, to the 16:9.
16 by 9.
Yeah, and we were literally, I think, probably in Australia, the first show, or one of the first shows to actually be delivered digitally in 16:9 format. Well, our first show was actually edited in 4:3, and during that was our pilot. And during the transition between the pilot and our local broadcaster acquisition, they went, "Look, we're going widescreen. I think we've got about 5 shows in the country out of the States that are actually available in widescreen. But could you do a digital widescreen product?" And we did. So we produced certainly the first 3D animated widescreen or 16:9 format TV show in the world. So yeah, we learned a lot about technology, but we also learned a lot about the deep technology. And that was things like servers, things like we had to build data centers and render farms. We were rendering, 20,000 frames of animated media per show on average, and you would render that 4 to 5 times. There were multiple layers and there'd be retakes and cuts. So we were doing a huge amount of rendering, and back then, probably on the largest computers that were currently available at the time, we could render a frame every 5 minutes.
I was actually going to ask you, how long did it take to export?
I think it was a single frame was about 5 minutes. You multiply that out by 20,000 or 30,000, and you start doing the math on how big our data centers were. And we were also incredibly unique at the time that we were also distributed. We weren't running in one location. We were actually running in 7 locations around Australia using network backbones and internet backbones that sort of were almost, for want of a better word, duck web at the time. People were still using dial-up modems, and we were moving data around on fiber optic cables. So yeah, we learned a lot about what it means to build and process data, what it means to build and process information. And it also taught us a lot about how we communicate messages as well. And I guess communication is something that I've always been passionate about. Always passionate about developing communities, talking with people. Myself, I'm also a cameraman. I'm also I've spent time in front of the camera. I've spent time behind the camera. I prefer being behind
very
the camera these
comfortable
days.
being around the camera.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time, sort of presenting concepts, and that's set me in good space for where we are today as well.
That's actually so many nice things you just said. And then it begs me to the question, of course, it changed too much. Of course, it's a totally different market right now. We can talk about the trend of Studio Ghibli's art being, transferred into ChatGPT and people making images out of it. So, of course, this is just one example, but it grows so fast. It grows so much. Do you remember, or are you fond of any technology that came during this time that you were working with, that you remember until to this day that you would like to talk about? Maybe the transition from...
Oh, look, it was one of the things that people don't comprehend if they've been outside the loop is how often that happens.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's sort of, it would be every day almost sometimes. We had technology that we were using motion capture technology, and we see it, and people see it today, and they see people with little funny dots all over their faces, or little funny dots, and they see it today, and everybody goes, "Oh yeah, that's cool." Well, when we were doing it, no one had done it yet, and that first time we put a headset on someone and captured their face and then real-time projected that onto a model in 3D, an entirely different character. And the first time you saw that was one of those, wow, this is real. And what we didn't understand until we did it was how well it replicated the actor's face. So even though it was a 3D character under it, was like a little basketball.
Let's pretend it was Shrek.
With arms and legs. But it was it still translated the facial movements, and it was capturing, we were doing real-time language translation. Because it was a children's television show, we were one of the first shows in the animation space that actually had to have lips that could be lip read. not even lip syncing, that could be lip read. So we were working with phonics teams and language teams to ensure that when a character went and opened their mouth, the shape was right. And when they were talking, the lips were moving correctly. Because we had kids that were effectively using this or using these animated cartoons as a learning tool. So we learned and saw things. So I would say literally almost every day there would be something. I remember the first day I saw a film box, which was this is probably 20, maybe 25 years ago now. It was the first time anyone in Australia had shown a computer editing film.
Okay, that's a lot.
That was, I mean, it was flatbeds and Steinbecks and one of the people that I'm still associated with today, bought one into the country and went, this is the future. And we all sat around going, you mean we don't have to slice 2 bits of film together? And look, we could do a dissolve or a fade or a cut or whatever it was. And so there's just so many steps in that journey. But the same thing also happened in IT. The same thing was happening, especially at the edge of the internet. I was very actively involved in developing communities and using conversational pieces and community pieces. So I was very early into things like bulletin boards, or what we called BBS boards back then, dial-up modems, and, a bunch of people with black and white screens sharing, sort of comments and thoughts, and then moving into platforms like CompuServe, sort of the predecessor, I guess, for most commercial people to the internet. And I remember the first time I saw CompuServe and got involved in it and discovered the fact that it was a really good tool to build communities. And the first thing you could do was build a community that wasn't in your suburb. Prior to that, communities were something you built in your neighborhood or built in your own town. We think today about, oh yes, we'll do some business networking. We create a Facebook group and we invite 1,000 people into it, or we create a LinkedIn page. Back then, that wasn't available. No one had those abilities. And I remember the first time I saw CompuServe in this space and I went, okay, that's another game changer. I was also very early on at the edge of the World Wide Web. While I was working and using CompuServe a lot, I was also doing a lot of writing, in my spare time. I was writing and starting to write about things like internet technologies and bulletin boards, and was approached by Schuster & Schuster, which is Macmillan.net was the imprint at the time, or Sams.net was an imprint of Prussia, so big publishing house, to write some books about this new technology coming called the internet. One of the things that early on in the technology space, there weren't many people that could translate the ones and zeros into language that people could understand. So I wrote the first book for CompuServe, partnership with Macmillan & Millan, that told people how to connect CompuServe to the internet. So navigating the internet with CompuServe. I wrote that book for them. Not long after that, I wrote a similar book for America Online and told people again how to connect to the internet. But what I saw under all of that was the evolution. I was seeing these changes happening before they happened. While we were doing that publishing, we were approached by a company called Netscape. It's kind of little company that a lot of people have forgotten
Never heard
about.
of them.
And at the time, it was Mark Andreessen, who's now a very well-known venture capitalist, and his team were releasing effectively Netscape 1, wanted to start to tell people how you could build a website. So, sure, we've got this thing called the World Wide Web that Tim Berners-Lee was bashing away at in a basement at CERN, and Netscape wanted to try and get it out of, for want of a better word, those government basements or the educational department basements, and actually expose it to the public. You too could create your own website. So we wrote the first book. I wrote one for Netscape itself, and Laura LeMay was writing one for HTML in general at the time. So between us, we published the first books that kind of said anyone, in inverted commas, could build their own website. And I was being there in the middle of that was kind of this kind of funky thing for me. I kind of enjoy being a part of those processes. And we did things kept happening really fast. We did 5 editions of that book in, I want to say, under 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Almost every 3 months, there was a new version of Netscape. Netscape 1, Netscape 1.5, Netscape 2, Netscape 3, Netscape 4, Netscape 4.5. And they were literally, technology was changing so fast that it was literally, and each of those releases was groundbreaking. One of the biggest groundbreaking changes was, and I think it must have been around Netscape, maybe Netscape 3. I remember getting a call from the developers going, "We've got this idea for something. We're going to put a scripting language inside the browser. Okay. Can you tell people how to use it?" Well, you're going to have to tell us a little bit more than that.
First,
And
tell
it was,
me how to use it.
well, we didn't get that option. We had to work it out. Here's the beta, here's an SDK, knock yourselves out. And that was what we now know today as JavaScript.
I was going to say F, but oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was, so it was originally going to be called the MCA script, but by the time it was released inside Netscape, I think either 3 or version 4, it was JavaScript, the language which now pretty much drives the internet. At that point, no one else knew anything about it. So myself and one of my other authors, we wrote the Netscape Developers Guide. So Netscape Developers Guide, if you're boring, it's a really boring book. I think it's like 700 pages of words, none of which are even relevant anymore. Of course, again, the technology just continues to change. Everything evolves. Everything turns on its head. So I think that's kind of the underlying craziness of this whole journey. And for me, it was diving in and out of that technology, diving in and out of the media technologies, keeping involved in that whole process. Now, I can edit on my phone, with Adobe Premiere Rush. I can edit it, and I can edit probably at a level in excess of the $500,000 tool that we were using in 2002, and that would take 5 days to render the output. So, yeah, it's been a big journey, a lot of change and excitement in that time as well.
That's for sure. Look, I would like, and I would love to keep on going on and on about
That's cool.
the Wes producer. But when I introduced you to the show, I told people that you were the managing director of Rapyd Cloud. And I think right now people are asking themselves, where does it all come from, right? So like, when did this happen? And this is actually a question that I'm personally want to ask you. Yeah. So when did you realize it was time to move from broadcast to cloud-based content? Was there something, because we know already that you are a very IT guy. So this is already a given.
To answer the question, I've never moved on. Both stay as a part of my life. Okay. I still work on projects today, and I still have a couple of feature films that I'm, consulting with, and television series that I will consult with. But that journey has changed a lot in the nature of the way the media and the way the industry lives. It's much harder in reality to make a living in that industry than it used to be. And it's because the world has changed. See, now we can all deliver podcasts, webinars, live streaming television from our bedrooms or from our office space. We can purchase, couple of $1,000 cameras, either from Sony or from Blackmagic, or we can run them through a broadcast switcher that in the past would have cost $500,000 or $1 million, which we can now buy for $9.99.
I'm using my phone as my webcam here.
That's exactly it. So all of the technology has changed. Part of me is still active in that world, but the other part of me enjoys the technology process. While I was working on the books and the authoring, was working on a little bit of media stuff, but was getting a lot of pressure from people who were wanting to be in the digital space, wanting to be in websites, wanting to be in technology. But there is a divide between the easy and the complex. There is a big divide between, I can go to Wix and I can knock up a website, or I can go to Shopify and I can knock up a website, which is I don't own the data, I don't own the media, I barely own my own content on those platforms. I'm pushed down silos that I have to go in certain ways, and I like flexibility. I'm a big proponent of open source. I've been involved in the open source community in various phases, probably since before people knew what open source was. But that led me over time through a journey, initially with Microsoft. About 1990, 95. Yeah, just another small. Microsoft open sourced their new programming language, which at the time was ASP, and a programming language called C# or C#, however you want to call it. But a part of what they did was they actually open sourced a software product, which initially was called iBuySpy Portal, was eventually forked into a product called .NET Nuke, which was a community builder. It was a content management system, fully open sourced by Microsoft and given to the community. So I became very actively involved in developing that community. I was an MVP for the .NET Nuke team for a number of years, but helping people transition from that complex to the simple. That journey was a good journey. I learnt a lot more about server technology, a lot about how to deploy complicated server infrastructure and how to share and host infrastructure. But again, the journey moves on, and I moved into the WordPress space. WordPress, the most well-known open source project apart from Linux in reality. If you had to say who are the biggest open source projects, well, I'd say Linux, and then I'd say WordPress. WordPress currently 43.6 or 43.7% of all websites currently online are based on WordPress. There are something like 1.
And the number's not changing, right? It's not declining.
Well, it's ticking upwards, but I think at the moment we have about 890 or between 870 and 890 million WordPress sites online, all technically open source, but it's obviously community platform, community source. There's a whole economic ecosystem behind it. There's, sort of hosts. There's a whole heap of people. So I moved from the Microsoft space into the WordPress space, and again started to discover that, as I discovered in the WordPress, in the Microsoft space, that as people move from simple to complex, things start to get a little bit shaky around the edges. I was talking with some people at CloudFest, which is a massive and big convention that's held each year in Germany, about a fortnight ago. And we were discussing this concept of the success divide. And it's this kind of idea that a lot of people start a site, or they might put a blog together, or they might build a website, or they might have an idea that they want to sell. So they build this thing, and they can choose a Wix, or they can choose a Shopify, or they can primarily choose WordPress. They are the sort of the three journeys. If they choose WordPress, they own their data. They own their content. They own the underlying, media underneath it. And especially for the European market these days, it's incredibly attractive to own your own content. But as they start to get successful, the level of complexity to manage those servers or manage that underlying infrastructure starts to almost bend vertically. It's not a smooth, gradual slope. It sort of hits a threshold success, and all of a sudden we've got problems. And that was what I discovered as I came into the WordPress space, focusing specifically on social communities in the WordPress space. There's a platform called BuddyBoss. BuddyBoss was a WordPress theme and plugin that effectively allowed a user to install a free version of Facebook on their WordPress site. It looked like Facebook, it felt like Facebook, it had activity feeds and groups and pages and live chat, literally running inside a WordPress site. And then came COVID, and COVID introduced an addition to that, something which is becoming increasingly popular called social learning. So we all know about Teachific, and we know about, you can go online today and you can, want to learn something, do a Udemy course. Social learning is the next step in that journey. It's those same courses, but conducted in a more structured framework, not unlike a university. So you sign up for the course, but then you join a cohort, and that cohort all work together to complete that subject. They might have to go and have group meetings and discussions, or complete an assignment together. So social learning has become, since COVID, a really big thing. BuddyBoss in particular heavily focused on that. So their platform, this thing that could have a private Facebook, could also have a social learning product in it. They partner with products called LearnDash, Tutor LMS, Lifter LMS, all available natively inside this product. And then they went one step further and turned all that into a native app that was available in the Android Play Store and in Apple. But it was still all WordPress, so that you could go to your WordPress site, you could do all the content, or you could open your mobile and see a true, proper mobile device there. So they created this very powerful tool that had the same success.
Very powerful.
Had the same success problem. While people were, 5 or 10 members, or they're showing their mum and their dad and their friends, it all worked well. As they started to get thousands of customers on, or they launched their product and all of a sudden discovered that none, and I say basically none, of the existing WordPress hosting infrastructure was able to handle the loads that they would put on their sites. And sadly, I know of a number of customers, and I say customers because they all came to me, and were saying, help us we've got a problem. We've just spent $25,000 on a massive sales campaign. It all launched at 9 a.m. this morning. At 9:05, our server crashed.
There was nobody else was there. What do you do now?
The server's dead. And I've heard this story time and time again. I was talking to a group of a big shoe, one of these, sort of shoe companies that had bespoke shoes, and they had a viral event October last year. 25,000 live checkouts hit their site, and their server was wiped out. To this day, they do not know how many sales they lost.
And that's
5,000 live checkouts, and you've got to go. Those shoes are $200 each. You know what I mean? So me coming into this space, passionate about communities, loving communities, but also passionate about the technology and about finding solutions to problems. So I started working with the BuddyBoss team 4 years ago. I was a customer, had 250 plus BuddyBoss sites that I had already helped to solve this problem. And I ended up partnering with the two founders of BuddyBoss, Tom Oshedi and Michael Eisenwasser. And originally we went, we're going to do this for BuddyBoss customers. It was probably going to be called BuddyBoss Hosting or something, because that's what it was for. But as we started to roll it out, the more we started to discover that it wasn't just BuddyBoss that was hitting this technology success barrier. The shoe customers, WooCommerce. There's a company in New Zealand that runs an online course that teaches Indigenous Maori, teaches everyone in New Zealand the Maori language, which is their native Indigenous language. It's like many native languages are being lost. They built this on a BuddyBoss site, LearnDash, and thought maybe we'll get 10 or 20 people on it. I believe they're likely to have 30,000 people try to connect at the start of the next semester.
Imagine having a forecast of 30 and getting 30,000.
Success problems. So that's how Rapyd came into being. We started going, there is a big problem. We're not a hosting company that's aimed at replacing GoDaddy or a $5 shared host. Sure, we can do $5 shared hosting, but it's not where we want to be. We want to be there to solve the problem for success, because unfortunately at the moment, the reality is that for probably about half of the people that get successful in the WordPress space right now, they eventually decide that they're going to have to go somewhere else because they can't fix the technology themselves. So they're going to go to a SaaS platform, maybe Mighty Networks or Thinkific or Circuleo or some other SaaS product, where they're giving back all those things they had. They're giving back all that data to someone else. They're losing all of that amazing flexibility. WordPress is incredibly flexible. It allows you to do whatever you want. It allows you to change whatever you want, to style things exactly the way you want it. When they move to those SaaS models, they find that all of a sudden they're clamped in or locked into corners. So at Rapyd, we sat down to design a platform that solved that problem, both for individual customers and for agencies and for enterprise as well. And that's what Rapyd is today.
And now that you talked more about Rapyd, and meaning making sure that the companies and their websites perform well enough to not have any crashes in the server and everything else. How do you make sure that you keep those people that were frustrated engaged throughout their journey? Because it's one thing for them to arrive at you and say, hey, Wes, my website crashed. And now they know the importance of getting around and keeping themselves close to you. But is there something in particular, any strategy that you apply so that they come back? Or do they naturally, now that they understand the need of a better performance, they stick around?
Look, it's twofold. One of the decisions that we made when we were building our hosting company, or when we were building this company, was to offer support in a different way. So probably, look, the traditional support model for most hosting is a call center that's hoping to get you off the line as fast as possible, attempt to blame anything that they can find that isn't related to them. It must be your plugin, or talk to your developer, or I've got to be honest, if you've got 100,000 or 1 million WordPress sites, that's kind of the model that you unfortunately get pushed into yourself. WordPress has a problem called race to the bottom, where hosting companies are being squeezed to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And the first things that go are support. And the second thing that go is server updates and improvements in platform. And so at Rapyd, we chose to do the opposite. Firstly, we built on the most modern technology that's currently available. And we've made a commitment to our customers, because of the uniqueness of our infrastructure, that we will upgrade every customer always to the latest technology. If you go and look in data centers around the world, you'll see servers that are 10 years old. Literally sort of running the same box. I think they blow the dust out of it occasionally. I met a guy,
Once every 3 years.
at CloudFest in Germany 2 weeks ago, and we were chatting. I said, what do you do? And he said, I'm a server refurbisher. I said,
oh, wow. That's a job
I,
now.
I said, busy job. And he said, we have between 100 and 500 server racks arrive every day from all parts of Europe. They come in, you refurbish them, pack them in a box and send them back out. And that's his full-time gig, just refurbishing these servers so that they just do. It's cheaper for them to, for the want of a better word, blow the dust off than it is to upgrade them, because you've got to remember, they've amortized those out. They might have cost them the equivalent of $10,000, 10 years ago, but they no longer cost them anything. If they were to move to the latest technology today, they could be up for $10,000 per CPU core, not for the whole server rack.
That's true.
It means that, something's got to give. So in terms of our commitments to technology, we partner with AWS at the moment. We're an AWS partner. We deliver only the latest, highest performance AWS infrastructure, which allows us to scale to 192 CPU cores in real time using very special technology that we've developed and pioneered with some of our technology partners. So that gives them a reason to firstly to hang around. But more importantly than that, when they reach out to our support desk, they get support like they've never seen anywhere else. 5-minute scroll through our Trustpilot just reads like, I've never seen a support team like this. Even if you don't need a hosting company, sign up with these guys just for their support team. Well, because see, we go that extra mile so far. We are partnering with agencies and smaller agencies who are saying, look, we've got 100 customers, but we don't have the budget to run 24 hours a day, which means that there's probably 8 hours a day when there's no one at the office. And those agencies are saying, would you be our backup, for the want of a better word, as our partner to ensure that our customers' sites don't crash while we're asleep? And that's what we do. We monitor all of our sites in real time. We monitor the entire platform in real time. We have DevOps and SysOps teams that are basically going, problem, address it, fix it. In many cases, the customer doesn't even know it happened, apart from the fact that they get a report from a reverse ticket from our support team saying, hey, we identified this issue, plugin updated automatically, we've addressed the issue, we've rolled it back for you, whatever's happening. We do the same thing with security. One of the scariest things in the WordPress space is malware. And AI, Derry. There is something like 20,000 new AI-generated malware attacks happening every couple of months. That used to be years. It's now like every couple of months. Now it's in months. 20,000 in months.
And that in the near future is going to be per week. And
well, yeah, it's script kiddies, and they now go, hey, ChatGTP, write me a virus. It's even scarier than that. So I work very closely with the WordPress team. I know a lot of the core developers in the WordPress community, and I was talking with the lead approver. This is the guy that's basically team accepts plugins that are added to WordPress and to be added to the repository, and they have a whole process of assessing them. They now know that a percentage, probably about 20 to 35% of the new plugins they're getting are written by ChatGTP or Cursor or one of or a lot of the code. And the reason they know it is that it's all really carefully commented, because the last thing real developers do when they're knocking out a plugin is comment it. But these are beautifully commented. The scary thing is, though, that what they've been discovering is vulnerabilities in that code. Because ChatGTP only knows what it knows. So it's looking at all the collected source code, and it's actually generating vulnerabilities that are arriving in plugins. So it's not just the script kiddies and the malware attackers, it's vulnerabilities being created even in the plugin itself before it's released. So it's kind of a big world. So we approach all of these things very differently. The worst place to put a security tool on a WordPress site is inside WordPress.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's just another plugin. It's just some more that's sitting there that's sitting in there. So
the main one, yeah.
So if malware attacker, the first thing they're going to try and do is just disable the
plugins and the safety blocks. Makes sense.
And they're all gone just like that. There was a big incident, I think April last year. A very well-known plugin developer about 30% of the WordPress world use that particular theme and plugin, had a vulnerability. You needed it and another plugin. You had to have these two plugins installed at once. But if you did, an attacker could gain full control of your site, could take admin control, and you could lose control of your entire site. They could take control of admin, remove you as administrators. They could do all this stuff. It was a vulnerability in the platform. It was discovered through a bug bounty. It was reported to the plugin developer. They updated their plugin, published it to the world. But WordPress users, being WordPress users, don't always update plugins when they should, or they might have reasons why they weren't updating it. A large number, we don't know exactly how many, but it's, in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people woke up on a Friday morning, my time, and discovered that their websites were now pointing to online gambling casino in Central Europe.
Or I was going to say exactly that. Crypto or
Literally,
online gambling.
Literally, every one of them had been attacked. They all had all those plugins installed. None of them caught it. So we install malware at the server level. It lives outside of the plugin. It looks into WordPress and watches what it does. It's not a scanner. It actually sits and monitors and goes, that looks a little odd. There shouldn't be a plugin trying to write that combination of what looks like, hidden code into that memory address. So it's looking at it intelligently. We also perform the same thing at the top end. We use a product, which is a very well-known product in the WordPress space called PatchStack. PatchStack is the bug vulnerability and bounty platform. They basically give people money if they can find a vulnerability and then virtually patch those vulnerabilities so that people don't even have to update it. So with our Monarchs tool, which is our Monarchs security tool in the server, and PatchStack sitting right on top of WordPress, it allows us to control a lot of those things in ways that, again, yes, we're not going to say that malware can still get through, but our customers will wake up to a security certificate saying, hey, this happened while you were asleep. It's all been addressed and dealt with. So again, it's about thinking about the problem and working out a way to be a solution, not a part of them.
And that's a thing that AI will still not replace for us, right? Having
Exactly.
the thinking and the knowledge to think and to come through all these challenges.
Don't get me wrong, AI is great. We use it
It is, I
ourselves
love it.
internally. We use it we have a very unique infrastructure which allows us to dynamically scale customers and provide them with processing resources effectively in an hourly basis that says, hey, you're busy today? We'll make sure the resources are there. But to do that, we need to be able to project and model ourselves what the infrastructure looks like. So we use tools in the AI space. We use tools in the AI space as part of our own code development suites. And we use tools in our support section. We have a wonderful AI support desk client that has a knowledge base of every bit of knowledge that we have in our platform, and it responds to about 25 or 30% of all of our initial ticket requests, and that will continue to grow as we build out the large language model and we populate the knowledge bases that the LMM consumes. So there's definitely a big part of AI in the hosting space. We see things like, Espresso AI and ZipWP, which are, plugins coming into the WordPress space, which are effectively AI website builders. You can install Espresso AI or ZipWP onto your blank WordPress and say, hey, I need a website that sells my product. Here's a couple of my images and, here's my business plan. 5 minutes later, there's a whole fully built website. Certainly, they're great tools. They're not perfect tools and still require someone to actually intelligently go through and monitor it. But they're useful validation tools. We also do a lot in the SEO space with some of our partners who are using AI type technologies, not so much to game the SEO system, because Google are using AI and Facebook are using AI, and we know that probably within the next couple of years, there will be no way that you can game easily SEO. No amount of keyword stuffing will work anymore. Because Google will just read every page and analyze every page and validate it for grammar and quality and content. So content will become king again. And in reality, Google will also know, and we know it already knows, what was written by AI and what was written by real people. So they become really great tools. And we're going to, continue to work and evolve in that space. Our dynamic infrastructure platform that we work on at the moment will eventually also support GPU-based tools for large language modeling. We can deploy GPUs now, but it's not a business that we're in. Where it will be a business we're in is when our infrastructure allows us to use this same very special dynamic scaling infrastructure we use in the GPU space. At the moment, again, it's just kind of the same problem. You buy the GPUs, you have to buy a block of them for a month, and then if you don't use them, well, you paid for it anyway. Our customers work a little bit differently. They can make estimates about what they expect their usage will be, and
That's
effectively
nice.
we can manage their services. We can boost customers. So a customer can say, hey, look, I'm busy Monday mornings and Friday mornings, but on a Thursday night, I get stupidly busy. And we'll go, well, we'll work out a way for you to average out your costs across all of that time. So that in a traditional hosting model, you have to go and buy the largest CPU or the largest processor that you require for the most busiest time of day. We let them, vary that. And even more so, a customer can come to us and say, hey, look, on Monday, I'm doing a launch of a new product, or I'm pushing out my newsletter. Can I have a stupidly large server for that 24 hours? And we'll go, sure. And they can with us. They can literally just buy a 192 core, crazily large instance for 24 hours. And at the end of the 24 hours, it just settles back to normals.
Oh, that's actually a very nice package.
It's a different way of thinking. So again, our hosting is about solving problems, not creating problems. So what we continually look at is what's the problem space and how do we solve
And
it?
how we
And our
solve it.
goal is to solve the problems before the customers know that they're a
No.
problem. Our malware solutions, our support solutions, our backup solutions. It's scary how many customers still in the WordPress space don't do backups.
Don't know.
They just did. What do you mean? Oh, but isn't it like on the server? And it's like, yeah, but if the server goes down, you've lost everything. Or if you get malware attacked, you've potentially lost everything. We back up in multiple layers, in multiple regions. Every one of our customers' data is backed up 3 separate individual regions around the world, and it's backed up twice daily. They don't even need to know it's happening, and we can pull back data, we can recover data. We rarely need to because of our, the tools that we use, like our malware tools and things like that, and our staging tools and things like that mean that it's much harder to break their sites. But again, identify a problem and work out ways to solve it, and do it before the customer realizes they need.
That's the lesson. Wes, I have one last question for us to close this episode, which I'm very curious to know. Now that we know about everything that Rapyd does, now that we know more about your story, now that we know about your goals, your missions, your priorities, I wish I could ask you more, and I'm probably going to invite you over to a second episode so that we can talk more
Happily to have
deeply.
another chat about that.
Amazing. But for now, I want to know, back to the producer Wes, more than the IT guy.
Certainly.
What's your favorite blockbuster saga that Hollywood created?
Lord of the Rings.
Created, I mean, can be, inspired by books.
Lord of the Rings.
Lord
goes
of the
without
Rings.
saying. It's long, it's big, it's heavy,
fucking love
but
it.
but
I
there's a
love it.
reason. But there's a reason why it's won 17 Oscars. It did epic at a point where, again, what Peter Jackson did, he did epic using those technologies in that very similar ways to what we were doing when we were first starting. He was taking the technology and pushing it so far beyond the realms of what anyone else thought you could achieve, and then just continued to do it time and time and time again. Obviously, Lord of the Rings, it's an amazing narrative from an amazing author who crafted crafting a world, crafting incredible characters, but from a production point of view, it's a standout in terms of where we are. There are other great little movies around, and there are things that I enjoy, and there are some great movies
The new
recently.
Dune movies are very good, in my opinion, in regards to production.
Which
as
one?
well.
June 1 and June 2?
Dune
Yeah,
1
the
and
two.
2.
Not the original version.
No, the newest ones.
The two beautifully constructed. I enjoyed both of them, and part of the reason was there was a little bit of a skew on the original narrative.
Mhm.
But we're seeing a lot of that now. Apple's TV is very good at taking narratives. What they did, for example, with the Foundation series. Now, obviously, it's one of the most revered science fiction novel sets. It's also one of the hardest to read, and most people get burnt out. It's a bit like Lord of the Rings, or a bit like Game
My
of Thrones.
wife can't
just
watch Lord of the Rings, she
Yeah.
just can't.
I can't do 12 hours, or even Game of Thrones, big, long books. But what Apple did with Foundation, they did well, beautifully created, but they broke the narrative. But there's no rule that says you can't break the narrative. I know there's a purist who go, oh no, sort of the robot should be a male, not a female. Or it's like, yeah, it's a news story.
I'm with you.
Deal with it. Tell a good story. And they did tell a great story. So, but yeah, to answer the question, I would still have to say Lord of the Rings.
What did you think of The Hobbit as a series as well as the three?
Look, by then you're
It had
just
the same
making
charm, right?
By then you're making movies for the sake of making movie. It's much like the new series, the Lord of the Rings prequel type.
Oh yeah, the
series.
Amazon Prime one.
Yeah, on Amazon Prime. Look, I must admit, I watched it. I enjoyed it.
Okay, great to know.
It's not. Again, it's picking pieces of the prequel narrative and then trying to sew some threads between things that may or may not
Power,
be.
right? The name of the TV show.
Yeah. And it's not part of the codec, so to speak, and they're going, well, what would have happened if Tolkien went back and wrote this, so, but each one is an interesting journey. But yeah, I mean, film and television will continue to evolve. It gets more and more expensive.
Way more. Video games as well.
And sadly, if we get into economic strife again, and that's always the potential, we live in economic cycles and, markets crash and, economies transition, the first thing that dies every time is our entertainment industry. We know that Apple is losing, I read an article the other day, something like $1 billion a year on Apple TV.
On Apple TV, I read the same.
Even with like 50 million subscribers, they're still losing $1 billion.
TV shows that they're producing. They're really
I mean, there's some fantastic
stuff there.
Fantastic shows. Only watching a new series there called The Silo, only in the last couple of weeks. Really well produced, really good story, interesting concept. But sadly, if you get into economic crisis, the first thing people drop is their subscriptions.
That's true.
And the next thing that happens then is that those studios go, well, we've gotten used to spending $200,000 to make a TV show. And I'm going, that's the budget of some small nations who, sadly, I do think there's a danger that we will see again. And we've seen it in the past, phases where the media and entertainment industry struggle to produce quality that people deem acceptable. That's always a challenge.
That's true. Oh, wow. Well, this has been Wes, everyone. Wes, thank you for so much. Thank you for one of the biggest inside conversation that I had here in the show. So much to learn about production, so much to talk about the future, to talk about the present. I could go on and on about video games as a media right now. I'm a very big video game guy ever since I was a kid.
As am I.
And you were even better. Do you recognize this, by the way? This is the Triforce of the Legend of Zelda, and I use it as the Triforce of courage here, just so that I can talk.
I saw the hand before, and I went, Zelda. Okay, interesting.
Yes, I'm a narrative gamer, so I very much like everything that you also defend for. But
I'm a very big MMORPG guy. I was involved in MMORPGs like, World of Warcraft before it was available. I was in the alpha and the beta type. Mainly the beta. I didn't have time for the alpha, but I was in Asheron's Call before that and Ultima before that. And so, again, because of my intersection between the gaming and the IT and the CGI, a lot of those things.
And
a lot of the people that I've worked with have wound up in those sectors as well. A number of the people that I worked with when we were producing the TV. So we had 170 odd people, and they've now, over that 20 years, drifted out right across the media, and they're in gaming industry and in film production houses all around the world, and we all touch base on a regular basis.
And it's the biggest right now, right? Video games as a whole. It is one of the biggest. GTA 6 is right around the corner. People are doing some amazing forecasts in regards to revenue for Rockstar. The amount of money that a single piece of...
only if our economy stays strong.
That's true.
If our economies struggle, if we get into a recessionary type environment, that's what I'm not saying we are or we aren't, but economies travel in cycles. We have peaks and then we have recessions and we have peaks and recessions. The things that struggle is the media and the entertainment industries and the gaming industries in those spaces, because people just don't have that. The difference is in the hosting and in the other industries, ironically, that they actually accelerate during those times, because then people are looking for a side gig or try to hustle their way to something else. So those industries tend to continue to grow and not struggle as much in those times. We saw that exactly with COVID. I mean, we effectively had a recession with COVID.
Yeah, that's true.
But at the same time, the hosting industry bent over backwards with everyone going, I've got to do something. I'm stuck at home. I'll build a website.
Yes.
I've got to go online, or I'll build a website, or I'll build an online community, or build something. I know companies that went from $0 to 6 and 7 figure incomes online during that period of time by looking for a side gig and succeeding.
Yeah, that's true. We have some similar SEO cases here around as well. The same thing,
Yeah.
happened during COVID. They weren't putting that much effort before, and then they started learning about keywords, about ranking, about showing on the Google, which was not something just to sell, but to show authority. So yeah,
Yeah.
again, so many things have changed. And by the next time we see each other, by the next time we talk to each other, I imagine that there will be more changes to discuss. There will be more new
100%.
things to discuss.
Every time, as I said, anyone that was at CloudFest only 2 weeks ago, we had a keynote session sponsored by HPE. HPE have built and partnered to build a large language model, pretty much of everything that Albert Einstein ever wrote, poured a huge amount of data into it, and created an AI of Albert Einstein, which presented its own 60-minute keynote.
Oh, wow. I didn't see this.
As an interview. So live interview, which went, "Welcome, Albert. What are you doing here?" Well, and it was real-time animated, 3D animated character, answering, literally hearing words spoken and responding and making opinions and expressing knowledge and information based on the large language model and data that had been connected around Einstein's writings and around a heap of other things. And it was great. It was still a bit hokey and edgy around the, I mean,
Just
it was
normal.
it's like, "Albert, you just answered yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like me to say more?" "Yes. Could you,
Wow.
of course the guy said, "What do you think?" And he went, "Yes."
Yes.
"I agree," for a better word. "Well, let me re-ask the question." So it was an example of a practical demonstration of what I would say real-time presence live language LLM models, as opposed to going, "Hey, ChatGPT, write my next university novel." This was a responsive, reactive environment, and we're going to see lots more of that.
I'm looking forward to see this in video games, coming back to video games. I want
Oh, sure.
NPCs that, can respond to what I say immediately.
There's no reason why they can't. And that we
Yeah,
will
exactly.
see. Well, the big challenge in that space is processing power. I can tell you now that
True.
large language model was consuming a lot of processing power.
Yeah, once
Um,
we get this to run in a very low-end machine, that's where we're gonna achieve such conversations.
Yeah, and maybe the Xbox next gen or the next, I mean,
PlayStation.
I imagine in the next Xbox and the next PlayStation, we'll probably see some sort of a neural engine. I imagine that will be, we're getting
There's
closer
gonna be
now.
Nintendo will talk more about their new Switch next week, and I already know
Yeah.
that it has an AI core in the CPU. So,
Yeah, it's
Nintendo
exactly
likes
it.
to
Lots and
innovate
lots of
stuff.
opportunity. Yeah.
Yes,
So we're
they
going to
do.
see that. And as I said, my journey for 40 years, every morning I'd wake up and go, "What's new?" And in the first 10 years, it was maybe once a week when you get a computer magazine, or you could, but as we've hit definitely the noughties and definitely into this since 2020, what we're seeing is iterative change, sometimes on a weekly basis. DeepSeek's launch.
Yeah, DeepSeek. It is also an example. It is also an example. Again, come back. I'll make sure that
I will. It'd be a pleasure. Love to do another call.
I'll make sure to invite you over. It's not me who wants to break up the
Oh, no, I get
conversation. It's
that.
just I know.
It's time. We've got to.
Yes.
We're past the hour, and we've got to chop this
No,
down
this
to
has
an
been the
hour.
longest episode, but I'm like, I want to keep on going. I have more questions. I
So
have
good.
more things to talk about, but we have to go. I have to let you
Pleasure.
go. Well, Wes, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being
been
in
a
the
pleasure.
show. It was amazing meeting you. For everybody else who's watching us, you have all the links in the description down below. Take a look at Rapyd Cloud's website. Take a look at Wes's LinkedIn profile. Anything else that might be interesting, we're gonna be putting here. Get in touch. Talk to the guy. He loves to communicate. He loves to talk, as you all just saw.
Yeah.
And we're gonna
That's
be
the
here.
bottom line.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. This is also what I strive for. I love to talk. It's what I bet. So why not leverage it, right?
Reach out. I'm on
That's it.
LinkedIn.
He's
If
on
people have
LinkedIn.
got questions, I'm happy to
Yeah.
happy to meet people. Happy to do calls. Happy to take meetings.
Awesome.
We travel a lot. We're at WordCamps. We're at press conference. We're at, I think this year I'm at an event almost every month somewhere around the world. So
I've been to 3
and
events
it's
only in
great.
March. Just
And
to give you
great.
an idea. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great. I agree. Networking.
it's great to be able to talk to people.
Yeah, I agree. I've been to only in March. Dubai for a week, Vietnam for a week, Prague for a week. March
Nice.
has 4 weeks. So it was like crazy. I get what you're saying. It was
Yeah,
very
mine's
worth
been
it.
Manila, Dubai, Switzerland, and Germany, and then we're off to Arizona in 3 weeks,
Nice.
and then we're back to Switzerland, and then we're back to Portland, and anywhere else that we can talk. A lot of it in the
Awesome.
WordPress space, and that's an exciting
Awesome.
space as well.
Awesome. Well, let's keep in touch then. Let's make sure to follow Wes to see his trips in the future. Wes, thank you so much again.
Been a pleasure.
For everyone
Thanks
else,
again.
this has been Victor. Talk to you soon.